Well, good morning, or good evening, good grief, whenever I see you. My name is Will Austin, and this is the Morning Report. We decided to do this particular show live. It is 2:06 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, soon to be Daylight Savings Time, which is my absolute favorite. As you can see, I like it because you can see the smile on my face. I really, truly love myself some daylight savings time. I just do. Today, I want to talk about. I really want to have a conversation about what's happening in. Let me get this over here. What's happening in that went up in Iran and this whole regime thing going on there, because for nearly a half a century, the Islamic Republic of Iran has stood as one of the most controversial governments in the world when it comes to human rights. So since the 1979 revolution, I was just 19 years old going into college then. The regime is governed through a system of clerical authority, ideological enforcement, and political repression that has shaped the daily lives of more than 85 million people. Yet, the international conversation about Iran has rarely stayed focused on the Iranian people themselves. Instead, the debate in the West often centers around geopolitics, oil markets, nuclear negotiations, or American foreign policy. Human rights, especially the rights of women, frequently move to the background, if we see them at all. That dynamic has created a strained and uncomfortable contradiction. Many of the same Western voices that speak passionately about gender equality and social justice often struggled to confront the realities of life under the Iranian regime. If there is a moment today when change might be possible, understanding the past 47 years is essential. All right. Now, again, back in 1979, Iran experienced one of the most dramatic political revolutions in the 20th century. The monarchy of the Shah Mohammad Reza collapsed under months of protests, strikes, and civil unrest. Most Iranians believed that they were fighting for political freedom, independence from foreign influence, greater social justice. Sound familiar? Hmm. But the revolution did not lead to a secular democracy. Instead, power consolidated around a religious leadership led by Rollah Khomeini, the Ayatollah Khomeini. Under Khomeini and Iran established a new system known as the Islamic Republic, in which ultimate authority rested with the supreme leader. Sound familiar? North Korea? And a network of religious institutions. The Constitution created an unstable hybrid state, elections for president and parliament, clerical bodies with power to override them, and religious courts enforcing Islamic law. In theory, it was a republic. In practice, it became a theocratic system where religious authority trumped democratic power. Now, one of the earliest and most dramatic changes after the revolution involved the legal status of women. Under the Shah, women in Iran had gained several legal protections through reforms such as the Family Protection Law. These laws expanded women's rights in divorce, limited polygamy. If somebody wanted more than one wife, they had to go to the court and they had to make the case for it. It gave courts more authority over family matters. After the revolution, many of those protections were reversed. Like within months, not like over years, within months, the government imposed mandatory hijab laws where they had to cover their hair. Women lost many legal protections in family law. Gender segregation expanded across society. The new legal framework placed women in a subordinate position in a myriad of ways. For example, a woman's testimony in court could only carry weight less than a man's. So if a woman said A and a man said B, B carried more weight with the judge. Fathers held stronger legal claims and custody disputes, and we saw that a lot with women, American women who married Iranian men that were here going to school or whatever, and the Iranian men decided that they were divorcing, and they took their children with them, and the women had almost no power to go to Iran and to fight for their kids. Inheritance laws favored male relatives. Here, dad dies, children, male, female, 50% normally. And under their system, dad dies, male son gets everything. He's the heir. So daughter, you're on your own. So these policies did not eliminate women's participation in society. Many Iranian women are highly educated and active in the workforce, but they place women within a strict legal and cultural hierarchy enforced by the state. Okay, and to enforce these rules, the government created institutions designed to regulate behavior in public life. One of the most controversial is the morality police, formerly known as the guidance patrol. That's a nice soft way to put it, isn't it? Their role included enforcing dress codes, monitoring gender interactions, policing public morality. So for decades, patrols have detained women for violations such as improper hijab, clothing deemed too revealing, public behavior considered un-Islamic. The existence of such enforcement mechanisms has made the Iranian state one of the most intrusive governments in the world when it comes to regulating everyday life. Now, just 3 years ago in 2022, global attention returned sharply to Iran after the death of Masha Amani. Amani, a young Kurdish Iranian woman, was arrested by morality police for allegedly violating the country's dress code. She died shortly after, while she was in custody. And her death ignited nationwide protests. Women publicly removed their headscarves. Young people marched in the streets. Chants of woman, life, freedom spread across cities. And what made these protests different from earlier waves of unrest was their tone. Previous demonstrations often demanded reforms within the system. This time, many of the protesters openly called for the end of the Islamic Republic itself. Now, the Iranian government responded the way it's responded to dissent for decades, with force. Security services, parliamentary force, the police moved quickly to suppress demonstrations. Reports from human rights organizations documented hundreds of deaths, thousands of arrests, widespread beatings and detentions, intermittent shutdowns designed to stop communications. They wanted to shut down the internet so people couldn't communicate. The state has long relied on these tactics to maintain control. So since the early days of the revolution, Iranian authorities have repeatedly used repression to crush political opposition, from student movements to labor protests. Now, Iran's political system ultimately centers on the supreme leader. After Khomeini's death in 1989, leadership passed to Ali Khomeini, who's the Ayatollah Khomeini now. Well, until a couple days ago. Khomeini ruled Iran for more than 3 decades, making him one of the longest-serving leaders in the modern world. Now, under his leadership, Iran expanded its regional influence. The regime hardened its ideological structure. Political dissent continued to face severe punishments. But time has created a looming question. What happens when this leadership era ends? Iran is now entering a generational moment where succession could reshape the country's future. As you know, the Ayatollah Khomeini was killed in an airstrike just a few days ago. So we are in the possibility of a new era for Iran. Because one of the most puzzling aspects of the Iran debate is how uneven Western reactions can be. In many areas of global politics, progressive movements emphasize things like women's rights, minority protections, LGBTQAI, LMNOP rights, democratic governance. Yet, somehow, when it comes to Iran, criticisms from some corners of the Western left have historically been inconsistent. The reason lies in a powerful ideological lens known as anti-imperialism. Anti-imperialism. Many activists interpret Middle Eastern politics primarily through the history of Western intervention, including the 1953 CIA-backed coup in Iran, the Cold War politics, and military conflicts in this region. In that framework, governments opposed to the United States are sometimes viewed first as victims of Western power rather than as regimes accountable for their own behavior. That perspective can produce hesitation when condemning governments like Iran. Human rights abuses become entangled with geopolitical arguments. And this dynamic has created what critics often call selective outrage. We see selective outrage about a lot of stuff. Western activists may loudly condemn human rights abuses in countries aligned with the West, while being more cautious when criticizing regimes that oppose Western influence. Iran often sits in the center of this contradiction. For example, Iranian women face legal dress codes enforced by police. Homosexuality is punished by severe criminal penalties, like being tossed off the tallest building that's available. Political dissent can lead to prison or execution. Yet debates about these realities sometimes get overshadowed by discussions about sanctions or American foreign policy. Now, this does not mean that all progressives ignore Iran's human rights issue. Many activists strongly support Iranian protest movements, but the ideological tension is real and has shaped international discourse for decades. Now, one of the most important truths often overlooked in Western debates is this: the Iranian people themselves have never stopped pushing for change. Over the past 4 decades, Iran has experienced repeated waves of protests. In 1999, student demonstrations against political repression, that happened. 10 years later, the Green Movement following disputed elections. 10 years later, nationwide economic protests. As recent as 2022, 3 years ago, the Woman Life Freedom Uprising. Now, here's the deal. Well, why didn't it continue? What effect did it have? Well, each wave has been met with crackdowns. Each wave has also shown that dissatisfaction with the system runs deep, and especially among younger Iranians. Iran has one of the youngest populations in the Middle East, and many of those young people grew up with access to global media, internet culture, and the new ideas about freedom. Now, Iran's internal politics are not just a domestic issue. The country's direction has enormous consequences for the entire Middle East region. Iran influences regional conflicts through alliances and proxy groups across Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Yemen. The regime also remains at the center of global debates over nuclear technology and sanctions. If Iran were to experience a major political reform or deeper political crisis, the ripple effect would be felt across the region and beyond. Now, what could happen? Predicting the future of Iran is notoriously difficult because the regime has survived war with Iraq, decades of sanctions, repeated protest movements, leadership transitions, and at the same time, the pressure on the system today are significant. Iran is facing economic hardship, demographic change, growing political dissatisfaction, generational divisions. Right now, due to the actions of Israel and the United States, they're starting to be isolated in that region. So if you combine that with the protest movements of recent years, it suggests that the desire for change has not faded. Whether that desire eventually produces reform, revolution, or something in between, we don't have any idea. Nobody does. We have a lot of people here on YouTube and everywhere else who are pretty sure they know what's going to happen. But the fact of the matter is that nobody knows what the hell's going to happen. But one thing is certain: the Iranian people themselves will play the central role in whatever comes next. So for observers out here in the West, the conversation about Iran ultimately raises a simple moral question. If human rights matter universally, then they must matter everywhere, right? Even Iran. They cannot depend on whether a government is allied with Washington or opposed to it. They can't depend on geopolitical convenience. And it cannot be ignored simply because the country involved sits at the center of a complicated global politics. So for 47 years, the people of Iran, especially its women, have lived under a system that restricts many freedoms most Western societies simply take for granted. The world may debate ideology, diplomacy, and strategy, but the story that matters most is still the one unfolding inside of Iran itself. And for millions of Iranians, the hope remains the same as it was in 1979. Freedom, dignity, and the chance to shape their own future. Well, my name is Willie Lawson, and this has been The Morning Report. The Morning Report is a production of fightbackmedia.com, fightbackmedia.com, and fightbackmediatv.com. And until we see you again, go out there and learn something, love somebody, and for goodness sakes, y'all take care of yourself. We will see you when we see you. Bye-bye now.